you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Curtis RPI Experimental Media and Performing Arts Center. Please silence all electronic devices. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Fall President's Town Meeting. I'm Prabhat Hajela, and it is my pleasure to introduce the 18th President of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, the Honorable Shirley Ann Jackson.
Well, good afternoon and welcome, everyone. And welcome to everyone who is watching remotely. I would like to begin this afternoon by acknowledging some of the members of the leadership team here at Rensselaer, and as I call on them, to have them introduce some of their team. And I will start with our interim Vice President for Student Life, Mr. Lenormand Strong.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. There are a number of the Student Life team here. I'm going to start with Dean of First Year, Janelle Fayette. And Assistant Vice President for Student Success, Lisa Trahan. And an adopted member, Professor Willie Cologne.
Freddie Cologne.
Let's see, and then we have Assistant Vice President Michelle Talenti. Michelle is Vice President for Student Transitions, and then we have Assistant Vice President Travis Apgar. And in between them, the man wearing that beautiful red sweater is our new union director, Dr. Charlie Cox. And I don't see many more of the senior staff, Dr. Jackson.
Okay, thank you. Our Vice President for Human Resources, Mr. Curtis Powell. Our Provost, Professor Prabhat Jela. Our Vice President for Institute Advancement, Mr. Greg Easton. Our Executive Director of Intellectual Property Technology Transfer and New Ventures, Mr. Bruce Hunter. Our Senior Associate Vice President for Research, Professor Robert Hull. Our Vice President for Strategic Communications and External Relations, Ms. Richie Hunter. Our new Vice President for Finance and Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Barbara Howell. And Barbara, maybe you could introduce David.
Sure. David Schultz is here. He's our AVP for Research Administration and Finance.
Our Secretary of the Institute and General Counsel, Mr. Craig Cook. Dean of the School of Science, Dr. and Professor Kurt Brenneman. Vice President for Administration, Mr. Claude Rounds.
I'd like to introduce Vadine Thomas, who's our Director of Public Safety and Emergency Management.
Our Director of Athletics, Associate Vice President, Dr. Lee McElroy. Vice President for Enrollment Management, Mr. John Wexler. Our Vice Provost and Dean of Graduate Education, Professor Stan Dunn. Dean of the Lally School of Management, Professor Tom Begley. Dean of the School of Architecture, Professor Evan Douglas. Dean of the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences, Professor Mary Simone. Director of the Center for Biotechnology and Interdisciplinary Studies, Professor Deepak Vashist. Special Assistant to the President for Strategic Initiatives and former Vice President for Research, Professor John Dordick. Vice President for Information Services and Technology and Chief Information Officer, Mr. John Kolb. And my real boss and the wind beneath my wings, my husband, Professor Morris Washington. I hope I haven't forgotten anyone. So thank you all for thanking them for all that they do for Rensselaer. Now today I have the great pleasure of summing up for you the state of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. And we are indeed thriving as we continue to work the Rensselaer Plan, which was approved by our Board of Trustees in the year 2000 and refreshed and approved 12 years later as the Rensselaer Plan 2024. Now, emanating from the plan are three ways that we are making Rensselaer transformative. The first is in the global impact of our research. For example, at our Center for Biotechnology and Interdisciplinary Studies, our faculty and students are making remarkable progress on neurodegenerative diseases and conditions. A group of researchers led by Professor Jürgen Hahn, who heads our biomedical engineering department, has developed the first physiological rather than behavioral test for autism spectrum disorder. The test, which analyzes the metabolites in a blood sample, is able to predict with a high degree of accuracy whether a child will be diagnosed with autism and even where on the spectrum they may lie. More recently, Professor Hahn's group devised a test for pregnant mothers that indicates the relative risk that the unborn child will be diagnosed with autism. The second way we intend to be transformative is in our pedagogical innovation. Our world-class academic programs are widely recognized. Forbes recently ranked Rensselaer 14th on its list of the nation's best STEM colleges and universities. Our undergraduate information technology and web science program has been ranked first in the nation by College Choice. Our Masters of Business Analytics has been ranked third by TFE Times. Our undergraduate physics program is ranked sixth by College Factual. Our School of Architecture is ranked 13th by Design Intelligence. In our School of Engineering, our graduate programs are highly ranked by U.S. News. Nationwide, we are 13th in nuclear engineering, 17th in industrial manufacturing and systems engineering, 23rd in aerospace engineering, and 24th in materials engineering. Our Games and Simulation Arts and Sciences program is ranked 6th by thebestschools.org, 7th by GameDesigning.org, and 12th by the Art Career Project. Now, we're always highly attuned to the opportunities offered by emerging disciplines. And over the years of the plan, we have created 22 new academic degree programs. And these include a new Bachelor of Science in Music program designed to prepare Rensselaer students for 21st century music careers in realms such as composition, production, or performance, for gaming, or for musical social networks, among others. We also have a new focus on quantitative health economics in our economics department. We're developing an academic focus in the Lally School in quantitative finance and analytics, and new academic foci in artificial intelligence and machine learning across the Institute. And while we educate our students for deep knowledge in their chosen fields, we also ensure that they do develop intellectual curiosity and skills that cut across disciplines. And that is why Rensselaer is the first university in the nation to include a data dexterity requirement in its core curriculum. We believe that no matter what field of endeavor they choose, our graduates will need to use diverse data sets to define and address complex challenges. And so all students at Rensselaer must now complete a 2-course requirement, one focused on the foundations of data modeling and analysis, and a second course that applies modern data analytics within their academic disciplines. Now, one of the fields that data analytics techniques are poised to revolutionize is healthcare. Recognizing Rensselaer's great strength in fostering data-adroit students, the United Health Foundation recently awarded a $1.1 million grant to us to create the Rensselaer Health Informatics Challenges in Technology Education, or INSIGHT pipeline. And this pipeline, encompassing both curricula and research elements, is designed to inspire the next generation of healthcare data scientists, as well as data-skilled biomedical professionals and researchers of all kinds. The third and key way we work to be transformative is in the lives of our students. We continue to invest in clustered learning, advocacy, and support for students, or CLASS, which supports our students with both time and residentially based clustering, and which encourages them to develop intellectual agility, multicultural sophistication, and a global perspective. Now, one of the most important examples of time-based clustering is the change in the academic calendar effectuated by the Arch. After 2 pilots over the past 2 summers, we will have full implementation of the Arch next summer, the summer of 2019, when all rising juniors will remain on the campus for junior level classes. This summer session offers us the opportunity to expand our curricular offerings with classes that now are not offered every semester or every year, and to give rising juniors the undivided attention of our faculty and of our student life staff. And then, with the help of our Center for Career and Professional Development and the Office of Undergraduate Education, these juniors will choose an away semester that suits their interests, whether an internship or launching a business or a volunteer or research experience, or an approved individual learning experience. And we will encourage all of our students who can to go abroad in order to gain insights relevant to the broader world. So as they pivot to more advanced coursework, the Arch will help our students to expand their intellectual agility and multicultural sophistication and develop a global view. Now, the Arch is important because as we approach the 200th anniversary of the founding of Rensselaer, we remain keenly aware of the context, the broader context within which we are educating our students. Now, last January, I had the privilege once again of representing Rensselaer at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. For the 2 years, I was the co-chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on International Security. And I was asked to lead a session at Davos entitled The Geopolitics of 2030. And with this session, I was given the fascinating challenge of considering major factors likely to shape the global security landscape a dozen years from now. Now, since all of us here at Rensselaer are focused on changing the world, I thought I would offer you a brief overview of what I said about the vulnerabilities, consequences, and opportunities that will provide a context for all of our best efforts at Rensselaer in the next dozen years. Now, as we know, the era following the Cold War, in which the United States led the international order, clearly is changing, and we are beginning to see broad economic shifts. China and Russia are exerting greater regional influence, and by 2030, there will be a new degree of economic might in emerging economies, including Nigeria, Iran, Egypt, Indonesia, Mexico, and Turkey. And the speed at which a number of them are emerging is unprecedented. Globally, over 2 billion more people will enter the middle class by 2030. But GDP is far from the only determinant of the context within which our students today will build their lives and careers. The other key factors include access to and control of key strategic resources, especially energy-related resources. Second, ability to adapt to climate change. Third, human capital and changing demographics. And fourth, the influence of rapidly advancing technologies. Now, in 2030, we're likely to be moving to a lower carbon world with a changing energy mix that will shift international alliances and alter the definition of strategic resources. Now, countries rich in oil and natural gas have used those resources to great geopolitical advantage in the past through complex trading relationships and even dominance of supply chains. Now, fossil fuels still will be important in 2030. However, renewable energy has the advantage of being able to be produced locally and being pushed, and it's being pushed in many countries, while bringing electricity to rural populations in the developing world that never before had it. Now, of course, there still will be critical strategic resources. The mix just will be different. For example, as the transportation sector electrifies, or as people call it, mobility. Materials essential to lithium-ion batteries will be key. In fact, lithium-ion batteries are important in the devices that I'm sure all of you have in your pockets. But here's an interesting set of facts. The production and mining of the requisite lithium, cobalt, and graphite for many of the technologies we use today is currently dominated by a few nations. As much as 54% of the world's lithium comes from the so-called lithium triangle of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. 55% of cobalt is mined in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and 66% of the world's graphite is produced in China. Unless the world identifies new sources or substitutes for these resources, they can represent a security risk. And so the search for new materials is an important challenge, and a challenge for our own Center for Materials, Devices, and Integrated Systems here at Rensselaer and its associated students and faculty. The second factor shaping the geopolitics of 2030 is climate change, which is likely to cause droughts in Africa and to threaten rain-fed agriculture here. And at the same time, as sea levels rise and storm surges threaten low-elevation cities around the globe. Now, we've had a series of hurricanes starting this season with Hurricane Florence that shows that coastal regions of the U.S. are not immune to this threat. Now, the larger world also is being affected and may see large migrations of climate refugees and even governments destabilized by natural disasters. But interestingly, there are new natural resource opportunities that are revealing themselves because of climate change. The shrinking ice cover in the Arctic Circle is actually allowing new resources and trade routes to be exploited, including, ironically, an estimated 30% of undiscovered conventional natural gas reserves and 13% of undiscovered conventional oil reserves. And control of these resources and routes is likely to be a source of tensions between the U.S., Russia, and other nations. Now, the third factor shaping the geopolitical landscape is the diverging demographics between the aging developed world and the developing world, which is experiencing a youth boom. Now, in 2030, the expectation is that the divides already are extreme, with much of Africa having a median population age under 20, while countries in Europe and China, Russia, and Japan have median ages more than twice that. And there are challenges on both sides because aging developed economies may struggle to maintain GDP growth with a scarcity of people of working age. But advances in artificial intelligence and robotics may be crucial to increasing productivity, to help care for the elderly, and to keep developed economies from stagnating. At the same time, artificial intelligence and machine learning may speed up the disappearance of middle-skilled jobs and increase income inequality. And that's a policy challenge for sure. Now, developing nations such as India, Pakistan, Egypt, Nigeria, and Kenya, in contrast, all will have growing working-age populations between 15 and 64, and this could be a great economic benefit to them. But it depends on whether they will have the education, opportunities, and infrastructure to take advantage of them. But here is a key challenge to raising living standards. Working-age populations are projected to grow the most in South Asian and African countries, where average education levels are among the lowest. The fourth factor shaping the geopolitics of 2030 is rooted in the technologies of what has been called the fourth industrial revolution. In other words, technologies that are merging the digital realm with the physical and biological worlds. While many technologies of the fourth industrial revolution can be helpful, they also can be weaponized. And some of them include commercial drones, 3D printing, which in fact has produced grenade launchers, CRISPR gene editing, which could facilitate the production of biological weapons, and cyber-physical systems that we increasingly depend upon, but that offer new angles of attack. Now, these same technologies do offer a lot of hope for strengthening what we do in commerce, in human health and welfare, and in industry and industrial processes. And for universities such as ours, advances in artificial intelligence, in immersive technologies, and computer vision, for example, will allow a new approach to teaching and learning. And these same technologies can confer economic strength by building economies that simultaneously can take advantage of the forward thinking and risk-taking of the young and the wisdom and experience of older populations. But this will require a new kind of intergenerational compact that Rensselaer represents, or should, where we work across the generations and across cultures, genders, religions, and ethnicities. Now, most of the freshmen that we welcome this fall will be 30 years old in 2030. In other words, beginning to fully grasp their own powers. And it will belong to them to address the vulnerabilities, consequences, and opportunities I've just described. And that is why we do work to help our students develop through class with both its residential and time-based clustering. And our residential clustering now includes both our off-campus commons, which has a physical space now on campus for off-campus students to meet and to study, and out of which our Safe Ride service operates. And it includes our Greek Life Commons. And so let me talk about the Greek Life Commons for a moment. Founded in 1853, ours is one of the oldest Greek systems in the United States, and an important part of many students' experience of Rensselaer. And when our Greek system works as it should, it supports academic achievement, community service, leadership development, and the development of deep, lifelong friendships. Indeed, some of our Greek organizations are exemplary. Others, however, have been suspended for various forms of misconduct. Now, we know that nationally, the Greek system is under public, legal, and legislative scrutiny. Dozens of universities and colleges have suspended, and in some cases banned, Greek organizations or whole Greek systems because of incidents related to alcohol abuse, illegal drug use, hazing, sexual misconduct, sexual assault, and acts of racial discrimination and bigotry of other kinds. Now, Rensselaer has not been immune to comparable incidents and behaviors, and some of our Greek houses actually need improvements in their financial stability, physical condition, and occupancy. And so in order to be able to create the space for a discussion, and it's important that we discuss these things, we delayed the start of Rush and established some new conditions under which it could occur. And that Rush now has begun. Now, I have appointed a Greek Life Review Committee to fully and formally assess the current state of Greek life at Rensselaer, to get outside perspectives, and to consider the best path forward. The committee comprises student leaders, both Greek and non-Greek, alumni and alumnae, Greek and non-Greek, faculty, administrators, representatives from the national offices of Greek organizations, and a diverse group of discussion panelists who have agreed to help us as a community to think through the issues. And we also are doing outreach to parents as well. Now, the review committee also includes an executive sponsor group of my cabinet members, chaired by Interim Vice President for Student Life, LaNorman Strong, and it is comprised of the following individuals. Mr. John Kolb, Vice President and Chief Information Officer, Mr. Craig Cook, General Counsel and Secretary of the Institute, Mr. Greg Easton, Vice President for Institute Advancement, Mr. Curtis Powell, Vice President for Human Resources, and Mr. Claude Rounds, Vice President for Administration. And their job is to support the work of the Greek Life Task Force, which is led by Vice President Kolb, and which is charged with doing the assessment of the Greek system based on the input of all involved, and identifying what is necessary to enact a long-term, sustainable, and comprehensive culture change so that the Greek system at Rensselaer can continue, can help its members to thrive on campus and to find their places in the world. The task force will be submitting draft recommendations to me before Thanksgiving with the goal of strengthening our tradition of Greek life for the future. Now, another important tradition here is our 128-year-old Rensselaer Union. And in August, I was pleased to announce the appointment of Dr. Charlie Potts, whom you just met, an experienced educator, administrator, and community services leader, as director of the union. Now, at Indiana State University, he oversaw a range of student life services, including its student union. His many career accomplishments include opening a new 100,000 square foot student union facility, enabling a student referendum for the construction and operation of a $22 million campus recreation center, and the creation of a student leadership conference that brought alumni and alumnae to campus to connect with students. And so we expect great things from him here at Rensselaer. Now, as a result of everything that we've been doing under the Rensselaer Plan, demand for Rensselaer education has never been higher. And after receiving more than 20,400 applications for our freshman class, we brought in some of the best students in the country and the world, the most academically accomplished and diverse class in our history. So Rensselaer truly is transformative, and the Institute is moving along well. And the Institute as a whole is in sound financial condition. Now, because of our forward-looking strategic plan, our tight fiscal management that some people react to, and our excellent performance planning and budgeting, Moody's reaffirmed our A3 rating in May, citing our large scale of operations, healthy student demand, strong fundraising prospects, and positive operations. S&P rated us a BBB+, and they said similar things. But importantly, while we intend to further strengthen the financial underpinnings of the Institute with our recently announced capital campaign, we are coming off a particularly strong fiscal year, 2018, that reflects our continued prudent financial management, our strong student demand, and our overall growth. And we had an increase in net assets. We had a healthy fiscal year endowment return, and we had a long-term debt reduction, which included prepayment of an additional portion of our debt. And as a result, what had been promised, what was called the crossover, where our debt exceeded the endowment by over $100 million about 2.5 years ago, I committed that we would create a crossover within 3 years' time. And we did it a year early, namely the endowment and the long-term debt were equalized as of June 30th of 2018. Moreover, there was a reduction in our defined benefit pension plan liability. We've been taking a number of steps to reduce forward liabilities of the plan. And we had an exceptional external operating result of over $23 million based on strong revenue growth, driven by strong student demand and by increases in gifts. Now, ongoing expense management efforts have limited our expense growth, and we ended up with positive cash flow from operations, even as we had an increase in contributions that we made to the defined benefit pension plan. Now, to continue this forward momentum, as you know, a little over a year ago, we launched a $1 billion capital campaign, transformative campaign for global change. Now, the campaign has 3 pillars designed to ready Rensselaer for its 3rd century. The first pillar focuses on our students, with the goals of increasing student scholarship and with that enhancing the student experience through bridging the gap, that's what we call it, and bridging the gap between the students' full need and the available financial aid. Now, a week ago, we held a scholarship gala in New York City that celebrated the launch of our new Bachelor of Science degree program in music with a wonderful performance of the Rensselaer Orchestra at Carnegie Hall. And that gave us a chance to thank a number of our major donors. And although the challenge for our students' financial aid needs still remains, I'm pleased to tell you that the gap is narrowing. Since we last met in New York City, those at the gala, for our inaugural gala in 2016, Rensselaer has received nearly $37,500,000 in new scholarship commitments. And in total, commitments to bridging the gap now exceed $100 million, due in no small part to the generosity of our alumni and alumnae, our friends, our own Rensselaer community, and our partners, our industrial and foundation partners. Our second pillar is endowing more faculty chairs through the Faculty 500 so that we can attract and retain the very best academic talent in the world. And in total, commitments in support of the Faculty 500 have reached $50 million. Now, our third pillar is building out the campus to accommodate our growth. The campaign will allow Rensselaer to expand our Johnson Engineering Center and ultimately to build a state-of-the-art Center for Science. Now, to support the remarkable robustness of our athletic programs and all of the leadership development that emanates from them, we look to complete, as the campaign allows, the second phase of our East Campus Athletic Village. Along the way, we will reconfigure our historic West Hall to accommodate practice rooms and teaching studios for our expanding music programs. We also will renovate, upgrade, and expand housing for our students, both undergraduate and graduate students. Now, I want to thank the people here who have contributed to our campaign, especially the cabinet, but also our faculty and students. And since the launch of the campaign, Institute leaders and I have been traveling across the United States and around the world to engage with the larger Rensselaer community. We have hosted events in New York City, in New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Boston, Florida, and in Silicon Valley and the San Francisco Bay Area. Internationally, we have visited with our alumni and alumnae in Dubai, in Zurich, in Shanghai, and Hong Kong. And it has been an exciting journey and gratifying to see how much interest in and support for Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute exists around the world. So many alumni and alumnae, parents, friends, faculty, and students are so invested in the future of Rensselaer that I can say with full confidence, we are nearly 200 years old, but the best is yet to come. And now here's something I want you to really come with me on here. You know, before I close, I'm going to speak to the fact that just within the last week, we have witnessed a spate of unfortunate and tragic incidents. Most notably, the slaughter of people at the Tree of Life Congregation Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the shooting and killing of 2 African Americans at a Kroger's grocery store in Kentucky, and the mail bombs sent to a number of political figures and government officials, driven by hatred, difference, and disagreement. Now, there are others, from a church shooting in South Carolina a while back to a nightclub shooting and a school shooting in Florida, to a shooting at a country music concert in Las Vegas, to a congressional shooting on a baseball field in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And there are any number of other incidents across the country. Now, these obviously have been perpetrated by disturbed individuals, but many are driven by animus of various kinds. And these things are very disturbing and not reflective of how we view ourselves as a country or as a university community. But they are occurring. And therefore, before I finish what I have to say, I want to ask all of you to stand and join me in a moment of silence in memory of all the victims of such violence. Thank you. It is important that we remember that we are one Rensselaer, that we all are part of this community, and therefore we respect all members of this community. We value different perspectives, and that is important in a community like ours. Because Rensselaer, if we truly are the new Polytechnic, is a crossroads that brings people together from across disciplines, sectors, geographies, from across ethnicities, religions, cultures, genders, and gender identities, to address important challenges. Now, our being such a crossroads is what animates and what we really mean by intellectual agility and multicultural sophistication and a global perspective. And as such, we are reflective of the world at large, the world into which our graduates will go to build their careers, to live out their lives, and to impact society. The values we espouse and how we live our lives can have great effect in the world. And therefore, expressions of bigotry, hatred, harassment, harm to others must not be tolerated, because that is not who we are. Now, irrespective of specific university policies in these regards or official statements, it is incumbent upon all of us to understand that Rensselaer is the home of all who come here to learn, to live, and to work. And as such, it is critical that each of us treat each other with respect, empathy, civility, and kindness. And this will ensure that the lived experience of each of us here, regardless of differences of opinion, reflect these attributes and reflect how we each would want to be treated. Now, if any member of our community feels that they have been subject to mistreatment, there are many avenues of redress available for students. Some of those avenues are their class deans, dean of students, vice provost for undergraduate education, vice provost for graduate education, the provost, the counseling center, and the office of the vice president for student life. For faculty and staff who may feel that they've been subject to mistreatment or feel threatened, they can speak with their immediate supervisor, a portfolio owner, or the Division of Human Resources in person or anonymously. And if anyone feels they need counseling, please reach out to the resources available on campus, the counseling center, the employee assistance program among them. And we will ensure that access to these resources is readily apparent. Now again, we are one Rensselaer. And I intend to reach out and spend more time with various individual students and groups of students and others on the campus. And to that end, I am hosting a student leaders luncheon and discussion at the Dutchman Shoes football game on Saturday, November 10th, with all cabinet members and the deans. And I have other meetings and events planned as well. And so with that, I thank you for listening. And now I would be happy to answer any questions you might have, or members of the team here. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes, please.
First, good afternoon, Dr. Jackson. Thank you for your time here. I'm sure we all appreciate it and really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to answer our questions. In the morning of September 23rd, an RPI alert went out. It was issued stating a student had been assaulted off campus the previous night, quote, due to his ethnic background. At the time this came up, I heard from a few students who were concerned that the RPI alert was not sent until a significant time after the incident. Last night, a shooting occurred at the corner of 16th and Hutton Street, a few blocks off campus, but at this point, an RPI alert has still not been issued for that, even though it was so close to us. To clarify, from the Troy Police Department, this wasn't a premeditated act. There was a woman driving and a car blocking the street. She honked at the car and the person started shooting at her. I was wondering, is there any plans for the RPI alert system, making sure it is more efficient in the future, if it's getting updated, anything like that?
Well, let me first turn to our Director of Public Safety, Vadim Thomas, to talk about the incidents, and then I'm going to turn to Claude to talk about the alert system. Please, Vadim.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. I appreciate that. The two incidents that you described, specifically the confrontation that the student had, we were working very vigorously in investigation. We don't want to give a heads up to individuals that might be looking to get away with that assault, and that's what kind of slowed down the RPI alert. We also believe that we had a pretty good idea who had done it, and it's not going to be a crime trend we didn't think was going to be taking place again. But we decided, and probably in abundance of caution, to send the RPI alert out just to let the community know why something took place. You're going to see more and more RPI alerts coming out because the philosophy is we're trying to put out as much information out there for the student body as possible. Some things will be seen as being important to folks, other things will not be seen as being important, but we're going to be utilizing RPI alert more and more to get more and more information out more than before to the student body. In terms of the shooting yesterday, that shooting, contrary to what you've been told about it, actually was not a senseless incident that was not planned. We worked very closely with the Troy Police Department, and in fact, that was an incident that involved a dispute over some narcotics and things of that nature. And we know for a fact that I've been in touch with the chief last night as well as today, and then in fact, I'm looking at a suspect who carried that out. That's why one of the reasons why we didn't send the RPI alert out was basically to sort of avoid stepping on the toes of the Troy Police Department in their ongoing investigation looking for that suspect.
Please.
As indicated by Director Thomas, one of the things that we've been looking at very closely is the use of RPI alert more often, more frequently, and for circumstances of great danger and others that might just be an advisory. So the question is, the time of your question is very appropriate because we are trying to identify how we can most effectively use that very important tool. I will also share, we have received some complaints that we use it too often and that we wake people up in the middle of the night. So, but we're going to be very conservative and we've always acted on a very cautious, from a very cautious perspective, and we will continue to do so. So the response is you're going to see alert more often, and hopefully it will be an effective tool if we really need it.
If there was, an understanding or a belief that there would be imminent danger to the campus, the alert would always go out. There are times when the Troy Police and other law enforcement will specifically ask us to hold back unless there is real danger to allow them to pursue a suspect or suspects without compromising what they do. So that is one of the determinants in what is apparent promptness or not of some of the alerts. So is there another question? Please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jackson, and I also would like to thank you for your time. My question is pertaining to the summer arch program. What is the specific reasoning for mandating students to live on campus for a 5th semester during the arch and paying room and board? And specifically for Greek students to move out of Greek housing and into student housing and pay elevated rates?
Well, let's not conflate the two. Let me talk about the basic philosophy is twofold. One has to do with a reclustering in order to carry out specific programming with and for the students and having them on the campus to do that and to be able to give them the attention and the programming that they need. Now, the Greek system is one that is still under review, and until we have our hands around exactly where we're going with the Greek system, and until we have strengthening of the Greek system overall, particularly with the fraternities, then it is a premature discussion to talk about what happens relative to whether students, as part of a residential clustering, stay in those houses. And so it's not a decision we're going to make till we're finished with the full review and what happens to recommendations that come out of the Greek system review. Please.
Good afternoon, Dr.
Well, let's let you get a microphone.
I can just yell.
No, this is good. It's in front of you.
Everybody. Good evening, Dr. Jackson. My name is Daniel. I'm a senior here. I know for a fact that students were barred from living in Greek houses during the arch semester 2 years ago in my sophomore year when the arch was first announced.
That's correct.
Given that that was in place before the creation of the task force and the whole fiasco that we're seeing with the Greek system nationwide and on campus.
That's right.
Was there a reason for it being barred then?
Yeah, the low
Told now?
occupancy of those houses. And, the ability to provide the kind of oversight that we feel we need and needed. And those were the reasons.
One more
Coupled
follow-up.
with what I've said about what our intent is with the clustering.
I see. There's one more follow-up question. I know this is a major concern for most students as well, but what's actually being done to secure positions with companies for the arch semester away, since I know that most of our peer institutions that do something similar have allocated positions for it?
So let me let Dr. Michelle Talinci-Michelle catch you up with where we are.
So as many of you are aware, we have built our employer relations team. So we have a pretty solid team that we're growing that have really been working hard in building metrics to look at where we need to grow our efforts. Right now, we have a pretty active database of co-ops and internship opportunities that already exist because our co-op program has been active. And we're working closely with the schools to identify areas in which we need to grow. So part of the employer relations strategy is to build liaisons with the schools to make sure that we're getting a sense of what students need and kind of go back and reach out to employers to see what employers need and make those matches. So we're really working hard to build that team, and the metrics are certainly in place to make sure that we're meeting full capacity for our students.
But it's also true that we have hired additional staff to work with the Center for Career and Professional Development.
Yes, we actually
to
had-
identify those opportunity pathways.
That's right. We actually had 3 people start this Monday, so we're really excited about the growth.
Yeah, Curtis, I don't know if you want to make any comments about that. Okay, very good. Please. Why don't you pass the mic back to him?
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We appreciate this. On behalf of many students, including myself, who utilize the counseling center for a variety of reasons, I was just curious, first off, is there any plans to allow follow-up counseling appointments to be scheduled online? Because it's very useful to be able to see when they're available, and I have personally encountered in my short time here already people who are afraid to pick up the phone, which is understandable because it's admitting that, for a lot of people, admitting you need help, even though there's nothing wrong with that, it's tough, and also it avoids having to confirm. It's nice to see when it's available and you have it in the system. And additionally, as Rensselaer continues to expand, is there further plans to increase the counseling center staff?
So the answer to the second part of your question is yes, as needed. But I'm glad he stood up because I was going to ask Dr. Lawrence to respond to your question.
I was trying to hide in the middle of the audience. I didn't think you guys would catch me. Those are great questions, and I think we have really good answers for you. I was just meeting with Vice President Strong yesterday. We're about to put forward the possibility of hiring yet another counselor in addition to 2 counselors which we need to replace this year. One of the reasons I think this gentleman is hearing some difficulties this year, Dr. Jackson, is we did have 2 retirements. One retirement and one young lady who's starting a family moved to New York City and so left us. We'll be replacing them within the next several months. So we'll have 2 additional counselors. Then we have plans to add yet another additional counselor as the demand increases. One of our plans that Vice President Strong and I spoke about yesterday is making it easier for students to get in. And with his experience over at Cornell University, he saw some things there that we are going to employ here, which is we're going to have these new counselors out in the community. They're going to have drop-in hours in different facilities in the community to make it easier for students to get in. So we're really excited about having that start. We hope that'll be started certainly by next fall. We hope even sooner. So there are plans to do that. Each of these new counselors will also have online portal appointments which students can see, which we just started last year with our triage counselor. So we think we can answer each one of those questions in a very affirmative and supportive way. It may take us a few months to get everything up and running, and we hope you guys will be patient with us as we get that done.
We appreciate that because there's so many great people here, and it's a shame when they're restricted if they're struggling, so thank you.
And let me thank you for asking the question. I mean, it's a very important one.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Other questions? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jackson. So we recognize that the president can ultimately make any personnel hiring or firing decisions at RPI, but you still could allow a vote from the executive board. So why did you appoint Dr. Potts without the E-board's vote?
I think there's been some confusion about that process. And so, Curtis, I think you and LeNorman need to speak to that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. As you know, on the e-board, you have 23 individuals. And in that process, the PU and GM selected a group of individuals from the e-board to interview the candidates. And we provide training to those individuals. They participated in the process, and that's how the selection was made. They put their input in, as well as our cabinet, academic deans across the board, and we had another group of institute-wide constituency group who also interviewed the candidates and provided input. So after we got all the input, Dr. Potts was the selected individual.
Key to the process was ensuring that we had the inclusion that Mr. Powell just spoke about, but also we have processes that we normally use. We changed those a little bit so that there would be better inclusion, and students were actually invited to join interview panels that previously had been totally administrative. So we thought that those 2 processes were very helpful. At the same time, we're still working to come up with approaches in the future that will help us to be proactive in our relationships with students, and we'll begin those conversations with Dr. Potts and student leaders very shortly, because we need to align the present Rensselaer Union Constitution with the bylaws of the Institute, and we believe that by cleaning those up and making sure that our processes are in critical alignment, that will avoid the kinds of concerns that we had this last time.
Travis, do you want to add anything?
And I do think there's a little confusion there about the e-board because, I do know that if you're recruiting for an administrative assistant or a professional within the union, the e-board is specifically engaged in that. This was an institute-wide leader. So we had to expand the individuals that were interviewing this candidate. So it just cannot be one group interviewing and providing that feedback to the administration as to who should be hired. So we expanded that to the campus constituency groups.
I would just ask that you give Dr. Potts the opportunity to show you how much he cares for students and the things that he will do. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, please.
Hello, I'm Mariana Jr. For those of you who don't know, last year we had an incident with posters that were being put up on campus that said it's okay to be white. Found them again today, and it's not just at RPI, it was actually a whole entire national movement across the campus, across the United States, also in Canada, also in Australia, mostly on college campuses, with these posters being put up as a form of white nationalism. And last year, we tried to get help with this. Nothing happened about it, and that was during the same time that we had the whole fiasco with another white nationalist group trying to start a club on campus, which we got shut down. But nonetheless, these posters are back again, and I just want to know if there are any, you're saying a lot about this campus trying to be diversified and support a lot of multicultural communities, but we're not seeing that on our side, especially when things like this go unnoticed.
Well, these things are not going unnoticed, and so I'm going to again let Mr. Thomas explain to you exactly what's happening.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Appreciate it. Those things are not going unnoticed. We're aware of this campaign. You're right, it is a national campaign. It's going on for at least 2 years now. We're taking down every poster that we see throughout the campus. That's what we're doing physically. Additionally, I will tell you that we're working very closely, and I'm not going to get into the details of it, but we are working very closely with our federal law enforcement partners to see what exactly this is emanating from, and to see whether there's anyone on campus here that's aiding that campaign. Okay? So that's taking place.
Kind of a follow-up though, if this is the second year in a row that it's happening, and you guys knew about it last year, why is it still happening again, if you're really taking measures?
Because we live in a world where there is a lot of animus, there's a lot of hatred and disagreement, whether it's based on politics, race, religion. And so we don't get to control everything that happens in the world. A university campus is a pretty soft target, and so we don't see everybody who may walk through or onto this campus every year. But we do the best we can, and a lot, to certainly remove any that we can find, but also when we can establish connectivity and responsibility, then we sanction those individuals. And I speak to what I speak to because I do want everybody to understand that. But can I tell you that we won't walk out of here and somebody calls you a name? Or we won't walk out of here and there'll be a poster on the Troy building. It's interesting. I've been subject to a lot of denigration, vitriol, profanity, people putting my heads on dictators, racist memes. But you know, I have to keep calm and keep moving. And I don't intend for people to get away with things that are harassing and intimidating to anybody here. And that includes African American students. I mean, you look at me, you know what I am. And so, because you don't always hear everything, or because sometimes we can't assign where the responsibility is. Now, I have a meeting and another one scheduled with some of the African American student leadership, and we're going to try to walk through all the things that we do and how we try to respond. But there are always intersections with privacy, with law enforcement, with trying to get to the root of things that have much bigger roots, and some of this stuff frightens me. But at the same time, you know, we can't just blow up and be accusatory of everyone. And so, and that's why I've made the clear statement that if someone is knowingly harassing you, if you feel that things are happening in your class or in your res hall, and these are university policies and things, or people that are perpetrating this, then we need to know. And then if we can investigate and assign responsibility, then we do act. But we act when we can assign responsibility. And we're pretty rigorous in following up. I'm sure that if our national climate continues next year, or it could be next week, such posters will appear again. But we're working hard to understand where the connectivities lie. I don't know if you want to say anything else.
I think it's important to keep in mind that we're not allowing this to happen. We're taking all the appropriate actions that we can, but we cannot be at all places at all times. We just don't have the ability, the resources to do so. So right now we're playing a little bit of catch up, but I think with the help that we're going to receive from some outside colleagues, we'll be able to sort of move in the direction of trying to figure out who is spreading these posters, at least on our campus. Okay.
And you know, there was an adage that was brought about and used in a different context, but you can help us to help you in the sense that if you see something, say something, because that helps us with our investigative process. Are there other questions? Please.
Hello, thank you for your time. I believe, not to drag too much on about these posters, I believe I was the first student today to see the posters and report them. I contacted public safety.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. And BART, and thank you to everyone in PubSafe, and thank you to everyone in BART that reached out to me. But we, as a multicultural community, alerted people that this was going to happen. It happened last year. It was publicly posted on many internet forums. And I believe that we talked to many members of the administration that this was going to happen. And still overnight, nothing was done to prevent their posting.
We can't. That's what I think we have to come to an understanding. That unless we're going to ring fence the university and post someone at every 2 feet, and if someone internal is linked to groups externally and print out these things and post them, it is very difficult to stop them. What we can all do is to reinforce our values, to report what you see, and to help us with the investigative process.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. But when I filed the report, it was 9 a.m. First classes at RPI start at 8 a.m. And I was very surprised to find out that no one from public safety had gone out, not preventing it, but also clearing them, once they've already been on campus. It was 9 a.m., and 15 minutes after I filed the report, I walked back from the Troy building all the way to public safety, and tore down the majority of the posters myself. I did not see any officers on campus till like past 10:30. And while I agree that it's important that like we can't just guard off our campus, like you were speaking earlier with all the tragic events that have been happening across the United States, these events are perpetrated by disturbed individuals. And for this to be such a reoccurring theme on our campus, I really believe that we need to be looking more at the students that we're bringing into this institution, because this is an internal issue. And we really need to be taking a higher look at who
When
will
you
allow
say
them to enter our community.
taking a look at the students we bring in, tell me what you mean by that.
I mean, yeah, mainly like the application process. Like, I just can't believe like coming into this community from like a very diverse community, from a very like multicultural community, to moving here to the Rensselaer community. I just don't understand how there can be so much like white nationalist sentiment within a community that prides itself on multicultural sophistication. There needs to be, like, these people need to be caught in our application process. We cannot allow these people to continue to enter our community. Thank you.
Well, there are times, and I can understand your concern, but most of the time, we don't necessarily have any hints that people will espouse any particular racial point of view. Now, I'm assuming you're not suggesting that, you know, we not admit a student because a student happens to come from a community that's predominantly white. We can't do that, just as we don't want discrimination against minority students. But what we can do is espouse the values upon which we will operate the university. And when we can establish culpability, then we will, through our judicial and disciplinary processes, deal with such individuals. But we have to be able to chase them down. Now, if there's a question of responsiveness in terms of when something is reported and how fast there is some reaction, then we'll look at that. And I will talk with Vadim and with Claude Rounds about that if there is some undue delay in what we do. But it could also be that people, and I'm not making excuses for anyone, that people are finding them elsewhere and removing them, and they may or may not have gotten there. But we'll look at this question of responsiveness. But I do want not to create an undue expectation that we can stop every incident and that we can tell who's going to behave how in our application process to say. And because someone has a point of view that's political or otherwise, that's not going to be a basis of our not admitting them. But if people act on certain things in ways that are harmful to our community, then we are going to deal with that. And so that's really what I'm trying to get across to you. But there's no way that we're going to have every student treat everybody the way they should, but we try. And I will say to you emphatically that if we ever find that a staff person or a faculty member mistreats a student, they're dealt with pretty, let us just say, substantially. Please, no, you've asked. Let me see if there's someone else. Please, Justina. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I see a lot of really familiar faces in here. Dr. Jackson, thank you so much for creating this platform.
I do want to comment on the idea of one Rensselaer. Unfortunately, I think it's an ideal that we can strive towards, but we're not there yet. And I really resonated with the what Director Vadim Thomas said, that we can't all be everywhere. But I see a lot of really influential people in this room, a lot of faculty and staff members. And although we can't get every single person that does something, we can create training modules and give the students and faculty and staff members the knowledge they need when they enter Rensselaer to make sure that they are properly equipped to have these conversations and confront them when they happen. So I know there is skill port training on unconscious bias, and I encourage every single person in this room to go through that training, because if we're all working together to create an inclusive Rensselaer community, you all have access to that resource and you should take advantage of it. And also I'd like to push that training, diverse and cultural sensitivity training for all of our first year students, because although we might not be able to screen them when they're coming into Rensselaer, we can set that community standard for what is and isn't expected and let them know that once they're here, it will not be tolerated. Thank you.
Thank you, Justina. And as you know, we are talking about this, and we're moving down that pathway, but that's a good message. Thank you. Please.
Again, thank you for your time, Dr. Jackson. My name is Samuel. I'm a second year. You stated in the beginning of your presentation that the students here were thriving at Rensselaer, and I don't believe that the underrepresented students are actually thriving. So I would like to know how you have been measuring this success, and also what is going to be done to make sure that the students are actually socially and culturally having a successful experience at this institution.
Well, let me mention a couple of things. As you know, we've hired a director of multicultural affairs who's going to be given a portfolio and an expanded one to work with students on, how to navigate. We have hired, and that person will be starting shortly, a dean for underrepresented minority student success to look specifically at underrepresented minority students, look at each student and understand how they're performing, what's happening with them, and to ensure the right kind of intervention strategy. We're going to be doing the kind of education and training that Justina talked about. We've actually already begun it with swaths of the staff, but her point about doing it early on, and we do some of that, but we can strengthen what we do relative to first year students as they go through. Having said that, then we want to try to understand more what's at the root of what's happening with students. Success here is a two-way street in terms of what we do as an institution, and I'm saying there's more that we can and should do. But it also depends on the student, and they're also reaching out and how they, let us know how we can help them. And so I know sometimes it's hard for students to say they need help, whether it's psychological, academic, even health-wise. There are statistics that show that underrepresented students don't use health and counseling services as much as some others. And so this question about people reaching out if they need help is something that we're really looking at. But we have put into place certain structure which we're still fleshing out. And it is my hope and intent that through discussions with people like Justina and others, that we get a clearer understanding of what the responsibilities of these people need to be to provide the kind of support that you're talking about. Please, yes.
Hello, my name is Johnny DeVersa. I have a follow-up question about summer housing. So you said that us having to live on campus is for clustering and programming needs, but then why are we also having to pay for an extra meal plan, an extra semester of meal plan? This is something that wasn't effectively communicated to us. In fact, the first time I heard that we would be living on campus and paying for another meal plan was this August when I showed up. So it really, from our point of view as students, these requirements make it seem like the Arch is more for money than for our personal growth, and that's just how it's viewed when you put these requirements in to make us pay money that we did not expect to have to pay at the start of Rensselaer.
Well, if certain things weren't communicated to you, we need to fix that. We're not doing it to make money. We're doing it for your growth and development. And so we need to look at how we communicate what happens and how we structure things. And so we'll take a look at that. Please. Yes.
Hi, it's me again. Just continuing on with the communication angle, there really seems like there needs to be, thank you very much. It really seems like there should be really a single person who operates as a direct line of communication between the student body and the administration, whose essentially sole job it is to talk to students in various circles of campus and then talk to you. I know at an institution like this, which operates both at a global scale and a local scale to ensure a decent student experience, as well as an extremely successful research university, can have a difficult time bridging those two gaps. A lot of times they are pretty far separated from each other. So why is there just no position within the administration that operates in that sort of role?
Because there are people in the administration who operate in that role for each class. There is a class dean for each class. There is a dean for student success who's there for all the students. There is a dean for the underrepresented minority student success. With an institution as large as we are, with the number of students we have, no one person can service all of the students all the time. And so what I would urge is that people use the Student Life Division and use the resources that are available. On the academic side, now it's a position that's vacant. We're recruiting as we speak. There is a dean for undergraduate education. And that person has a structure under her or him, but that is a point of contact for students on things academic. Now, if things don't work there, then one can go to the provost himself. But so each class has a class dean, and that's what the class dean's job is for that cohort of students. You have the young woman sitting in front of you, Michelle Talenci-Michelle, who's in charge of student transitions. She is a resource for you. You have the dean of students sitting next to her. So this idea that there's one singular person, these people are the administration, but they are here for support and advocacy for the students. And so the real thing is if we haven't made you fully enough aware of what people do, then we'll take that under advisement and try to improve that. But to say that there is nothing there is simply not the case. But we do have to see how we can have things work in a more efficacious way in terms of people getting the support and how to resolve issues for themselves. And that's something that we will look at. Yes, please. Yes.
This is a question about housing in general. So I'm in RA on Freshman Hill, and I've noticed that there's a lot of problems with the Freshman 5 specifically regarding just generally needing updates. And so I've heard through the grapevine that there's a lot of money, or there's talk of money being put in toward developing ECAV and sports stuff. We're not really a sports school, but also I'm also noticed that every single year we get more and more students. My class is 1,700. I think this last freshman class is 1,900 or something crazy like that.
No, it's not 19.
Nonetheless, what I'm saying to you is student housing needs a lot of improvement. It needs updates. And so it's cool to build new stuff on campus, but if the things we already have are being neglected, that's a problem. So just wondering what your plan is to update, if you have one, to update all of the, or at least.
We
at the very
have
least, if that should
one.
happen.
Let me let Claude speak to you. Thanks. You know, it's helpful when you all ask a question that you don't add a pejorative piece to it, because then it's easier to have a good conversation. But Claude, please.
I'll begin by just referring to the comments that the President made regarding the campaign, because one of the 3 focus points of the campaign will be build out the campus. And in that regard, there is a plan for new and expanded student housing. In addition to that, every year we have a rolling renovation plan where we will take resident halls out of service to completely renovate them and upgrade them. And then we also go into the other resident halls and do annual upkeep, painting, environmental improvements, okay? So we are investing money on an ongoing basis every single year in our resident commons.
We're about to undertake planning to look at projecting the housing needs out over the next several years and look at, what additional housing we may need to bring online, even as we're looking to ramp up the rolling renovations that Claude talked about. And so that's something that we specifically are looking at. And we haven't started anything with the East Campus Athletic Village. And in fact, changes or additions we might make are dependent on getting specific gifts for what we would do. And so as far as what we actually do out of our regular university budget, it's only focused on how we can make improvements along the lines that you're talking about.
And I should know, even though a lot of this is not very visible to the campus population, but in the last 4 years, we've renovated and upgraded about 640 resident hall rooms, resident beds. So that's quite a bit of work on an ongoing basis, and we will continue that.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Jackson. My name is Taylor Blue Clark. Please call me Blue. As a minority student on campus, I feel like that, not that I'm not wanted here, but I don't feel like that I'm not welcome. What's the word? It's not a good place for me to say. For some of the programs that we have, or used to have, like AMSA, maybe HEOP or C-STEP, for programs that help us feel more together or have a more of a culture on campus. I heard that we used to have those programs here, but they were taken away for, I don't know why. But I'm just curious if they're possibly looking to be re-implemented, because I know, talking to some of the STAR students that we had for the past weekend, or was it 2 weekends ago, but they didn't really feel like this campus was welcoming them. Majority of those students were underrepresented minorities, and I feel like those programs would definitely add to, or give them a bigger chance to feel together on this campus.
OMSA and HEOP, by the time I got here, were not serving who you may have thought they were serving. And I'll just leave it at that. Secondly, we're putting into place structures for today that, and we're, as I said, hopeful that in meeting with a number of student leaders like Justina and others, that we'll learn more specifically what students' needs are. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to recreate a structure of the past, but rather look to what is needed on a go-forward basis. Because that's the way we are as a university. We're forward-looking. So that's what I can say. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, and your cabinet for all being here and fielding questions. Just to introduce myself, my name is Stephanie Warner, and I'm the current Grand Marshal. Just to comment on an earlier question that was fielded regarding the executive board vote in regard to the director of the union hiring. As Grand Marshal, I was not included in the interview process initially. I, as GM, was excluded from the invitations to interview, and the administration only added me to the May interviews after it was pointed out that I had been notably excluded by the president of the union, Justin. In addition, on June 3rd, the 2 finalists were invited back to campus, and a select number of students were invited to meet the candidates, though Justin and I, both as acting GM and PU, were excluded. It wasn't until it was brought to the attention of who had sent out the invitation that that invitation was extended, but of course it was day of, and taking into consideration the very rigorous RPI schedule, we were both unable to attend. So I was hoping you could just speak on that breakdown of communication and the lack of genuine student.
No, I didn't run the process, so I'm going to let Curtis Powell speak to that.
Where's Dr. Lawrence? I'm going to have to get online and sign up for one of your counselors if people keep talking about the union. Well, let me just say this. We've hired a director. It's over. He's right here. Charlie, would you stand up? Some people don't seem that they don't know that. Here you go. That's Dr. Potts, okay? Now, to go back and say, oh my God, I wasn't invited. You were invited. We didn't invite you initially. We didn't have your email address. We didn't have that information on. Once we got it, we sent it out and we invited you. So we do make mistakes. We made a mistake. We didn't invite you, but we did. I don't know what more you want.
May I comment?
Sure.
So whereas I do really, really appreciate Dr. Potts, we get lunch every single Tuesday, and I enjoy that hour with him. And I'm very grateful to have him, whereas I do think that it would be a little bit silly not to recognize the breakdown that did occur, especially moving forward. There are issues in the hiring process, whether it be miscommunication between the students and the administration, or how invitations were sent out, and I do recognize that humans make mistakes. But I am curious what steps are being made to further that process to make sure that we're not having those same issues.
You are coming in on the second search. We had a search initially. There was a lot of work that was done in that initial search with the previous PU GM, with the current PU GM. You came aboard at the end of the process. And so the process worked very well for us, where we've identified great candidates. That's what I'm looking for. That's what the institution is looking for. We did a great job. We hired a great candidate. So I'm pleased with the process.
Norman, you wanted to make a comment?
I want to speak directly to what we're doing to improve communication. I've asked Dean Apgar to work closely with Dr. Potts in thinking about the processes that we need in place, and certainly the lunches that you and I are about to start will be a part of that. As my colleague Curtis Powell said, the process wasn't smooth from our perspective either, but our commitment is to make it better and to start to do things now intentionally that will help us going forward, and to make sure that the weekly meetings that you're having continue, that the other meetings that we're going to be having, including those with Brian Johns on behalf of the Student Life Committee, are in place, and that we have a commitment to make sure that they are ongoing. Some of the other AVPs in Student Life will be a part of those as well, because we realize that that kind of slippage doesn't serve us on either side. So that's what I can say for right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm going to say a couple of things here, because we're going to have to draw this to a close. You know, we're here, and, you know, we're here, and the university is here for the long term. And every year, there's, of course, a turnover in student leadership. And depending upon where that turnover occurs in the sense of whether it's a search or some other decision-making, then some people can get caught in that glitch and not have as much involvement as they ideally would like to have. And I think people have said that, they didn't mean harm, but they were moving along, and there were good candidates who had been surfaced, and so people moved along and tried to be as inclusive as they could be. I think it's really unfair to the leadership here to always assume that there is malintent, and there isn't. And so people do the best they can, but they are humans. And so people do make mistakes. If any of us look back, there are things that we might have chosen to do, and we might say we would do them differently. But at a certain point, you have to turn the page and decide, are you going to go forward or look back? And what's going to define your own leadership? And there are many things that you can work with Dr. Potts on, that you can work with the administration on. But it's a decision you have to make. And I can't make that for you, but I think any number of us are willing to work with you. But it's a decision at a certain level in terms of we learn from mistakes. We can try to do things differently, but we have to decide whether we're going to turn the page. Now, people seem to harbor a lot of things for a long time around here. And, I have some minority students sitting in front of me who feel that they aren't well treated and well treated by some of you. And so the issue becomes, can you as leaders embrace them? Can they, as leaders in the minority communities, embrace you and look to work together to create a better Rensselaer? I hear a lot of things from people here, and not always in a pleasant form. I hear a lot of things from alums, not always in a pleasant form. But we all have our lived experience. And when I went to college, I went at a time when there were 5 African Americans in my class and 43 women out of 900. So what happened to me there? People wouldn't sit next to me in class. And if I came in first, they wouldn't even sit in front of me. The white students formed their study groups. I was left out of it. I was even told to go away when I asked to join a group. Now, I was pretty hurt, and I even cried. But in the end, I decided I would go back and do my physics problems. But my real message is that I had to decide, was I going to let this wear me down, or was I going to move ahead? Was I going to carry bitterness with me through my career? Or was I going to try to judge people as individuals? And I decided the latter. And I would just hope that on a number of these stumbles and stumbling blocks, that we can all turn the page. Because it doesn't do any good to keep rehashing things over and over again. I had some pretty horrific experiences. I've only told you a thimbleful. But I'm not going to let those sorts of things define my life. And they were much more horrific than some of the things we've been talking about here. And so, again, we all have to decide if we're going to turn a page. But this is a wonderful community. And if we would just look around and have a little more tolerance and open our eyes, we'd see how really fortunate all of us are to be here and how great the people are who are here. But we have to be able to support ourselves, support each other, and to respect one another. And that is my message for you this afternoon. And thank all of you for being here.